Welcome to our talks. Tonight we have Christopher Gauthiér. He's been an assistant professor of photography at Utah State University since 2008. Prior to coming to Utah State University, Christopher taught at Jackson State University in Pittsburgh, Black College, and University of Jackson, Mississippi. He received a Master of Fine Arts degree from Ohio University of Photography in 2003 and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Cinema and Photography from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale in 1997. His photography can be found in the permanent collections of the Mississippi Museum of Art, Webster University, the Netherlands, Koltsovo Airport, Yekaterinburg, Russian Federation, and private collections nationally and internationally. Christopher has presented his project, Evidence of Artifacts, at conferences, symposiums, and workshops in art, the environment, and disability, including at the Association of University Centers on Disabilities in 2012 conference in Washington, D.C., the 2013 Mountain West Arts Conference, and 3 consecutive years at the U.S. Autism and Asperger Association World Conference. In 2013, Christopher was awarded a Utah Visual Arts Fellowship and the Autism Council of Utah's Individual of the Year Award. His focus on autism evolved after struggling to assess the necessary interventions and treatments for his children on the spectrum, and from his own life experience as an individual affected by Aspergers Syndrome. It is his goal to stimulate the national dialogue on the impact of environmental insults on human health and development. Christopher currently sits on the advisory board of the U.S. Autism and Asperger Association and Madison House Autism Foundation, a nonprofit advocacy organization whose mission is to improve the lives of adults facing the challenges of autism spectrum disorder. Please welcome Christopher Gauthiér.
First, I've never gotten a standing ovation. Second, I've never gotten in the beginning before. Thoroughly overwhelming. So, you know what? Amy asked me to come. I thought to myself, well, what do I talk to you guys about? And I get to talk nationally. I get to talk to politicians. I get to talk to really powerful people with lots of money. You know, I get to talk to all these really interesting folks. I've done a TED Talk. And this is really, really a different talk that I want to give you. Because you're students, because you're young, because you are the future. You are the future. I want to ask you to consider the possibility of what can you do? What can your art do? What can your gift give to a community of people outside or inside your own circle of influence? My journey in autism began, 8 years and 1 week ago. And I know this specifically because it's the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. And the first picture you saw was my daughter. She was our little gift from Hurricane Katrina. We had survived, my wife and I, the worst natural disaster that either of us had ever been in our lives. And I've lived in California, lived through the earthquakes. It was terrifying. It had decimated the Mississippi coast, New Orleans. You guys have all seen pictures of this. We lived through it. The thing literally came by our house. Less than a mile away was the eye wall, and it was over a Category 2. It was absolutely terrible. Well, we had no running water, we had no electricity, we had nowhere to go. The university was shut down, it was full up with evacuees. And, you know, one thing led to another, and her little gift came 9 months later. My daughter Madison, my little hurricane baby. Her birth was phenomenal, it was breathtaking, it was awe-inspiring. And she literally came out kicking and screaming. I mean, there was none of this like baby get pat on the bottom thing going on. She was wailing to the universe. And I thought, yeah, that's my girl. She's going to take my girl. Except the problem was, what I know now, if I had known then, I should have been very concerned. My daughter has sensory processing disorder. Her birth was terrible. It was cripplingly terrible. She has one of those high fight or flight modes, like it's really, really amped up. And that was what her birth was. And her experience as a child, as an infant, was again not a very pleasant one. It wasn't a normal one. It wasn't a neurotypical one. She had horrible bowel movements. I mean, that little girl had runny diapers from front to end for months on end. Her little bottom looked like amber. We could not get the medical professionals to listen to us about the serious nature of the struggles we were facing. The pediatricians would just go, oh, that's a phase. face, oh, she'll transition through it, oh, she'll get over it. She never did. Eventually, yes, now, she's 7. Those things have now started to go away. We've done interventions to solve some of those things. Well, 14 months later, my son was born, Caleb. He was a very different child. He was developing normally until about 18 months. And then all of a sudden, he shut down. Now, Caleb was really different because prior to that, he was using words. His first word, literally Caleb's first word was office. It wasn't dad, it wasn't mom, it was office. Which was kind of funny, and again, another one of those telltales I should have known, right? My son is rather brilliant and can decode things, could decode words by 2.5. He was reading by 3. Really simple signs. We'd drive by someplace and we wouldn't even point it out. We'd never pointed it out at all. And suddenly he'd go, apple. And you're like, yeah, that's an apple sign. Oh, great, I'm in trouble. But he regressed. Maddie never regressed, but Caleb did. And he would start doing perseverance behaviors, which is he would pick up a car and he'd spin wheels over and over again. He would gravitate towards doors and open doors, open doors, open doors, open doors, open doors. And he wouldn't talk. You know, you could call his name. He's across the room. He could be in trouble. He could be falling or getting himself hurt. No registration. Never acknowledge that he heard you or knew you were even in the room. You literally would have to go up and pick him up and turn him around and force him to look you in the eyes to get any sort of engagement. This was really, really hard. And by this time, we had moved to Logan, to Utah State, which was a really great thing because the Center for Persons with Disabilities up there was offering the F3 program. It was one of the Baby Watch Early Intervention programs. And they introduced us to DIR4 time, which is a play therapy model. It's about building relationships with someone who has autism versus training them to perform a task. And that was great because it's conducive to both my wife and I's parenting styles. We are very interactive. We are process art people. It's all about getting their senses to calm down or sort of getting used to the senses of things. And so our parenting style matched into this beautifully. It took probably a year for us to sort of get out from under the kind of crushing weight that autism was putting on our lives. We changed their diet. We went to gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free. We made our kids are totally GFC and SF. We've gotten as much plastics out of their environment as we possibly can. We've taken out as much GMOs as possible. And we've seen huge improvements in our kids. I mean, massive improvements. With enough improvement that we could actually think about having enough energy to do something for the community and give it to us. And that's where Evidence and Artifacts Facing Autism comes from. It's a long-term documentary portrait project of the national autism community. And unlike many other people who do very similar work in the autism community, I'm not looking at just those affected. I'm also looking at the family members, the mothers, the fathers, the siblings that are living with folks who are really struggling with autism. The doctors, the clinicians, the researchers, the teachers, the therapists, the social workers, everybody who's committed their lives to the benefit of someone that they are really in love with, they really care about, who they see suffering on a daily basis with autism spectrum. It's what I refer to as the ripple effect of autism. It's not 1 in 88, it's not 1 in 47. There are hundreds of thousands of people every day who are living with autism. Not just struggling with it, not just on the spectrum, literally living. And I'm pretty sure that everybody in this room, without exception, does know someone who has autism, of one variety or another. We live in Utah. We have the highest prevalency rates in the country. The highest. The thing that I've really enjoyed about this work is it has given me the opportunity to meet absolutely incredible people. I mean, the parents are amazing. Oh, she is a wonderful girl. I'm fired. You know, she's an Askie. It's amazing what Askies will do. I've been able to meet people like Timothy Page, who has Asperger's, and he is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author, teaches in Southern California. Or a young woman who I photographed in Washington, D.C., Sarah Kohler, who lives in a residency program half the time and spends the other half of the time with her dad, who's a community advocate up in Baltimore. And Sarah doesn't really speak much. She does a little bit. But when we sat down, she was really, really terrified of the lights and the strobe and the camera and the stranger. I to sort of slowly introduce myself. I started using floor time play therapy with the human interaction. There's a portrait of her, just sort of, it looks like this kind of very classic Flemish portrait painting. And you can see the intelligence in her eye. She knew I was there. She was very engaged in me. She was very interested in me, but she's very, very afraid of the world around her. Or Magnificent Magnus, this fabulous little 2.5-year-old redhead, who, if I looked at him, he would hide his face, or he would hide behind Mom, but who initiated the photo session. My son was running around, and Magnus kind of followed after him. And then he hops up on the posing stool, and looks at me, and I saw him out of the corner of my eye. I looked at him, and he looks down, looked away, and he looks back up. I kind of side-saddled over, picked up the camera, kept talking to his mom, and I put the camera up to my face, and Magnus kept looking. Anytime I would look around the camera at him, Magnus hid. Anytime I let the camera be the eye, Magnus could look at me. He could engage with me. And the portrait that you see of Magnus, I'm sure we've already gone past it, is a little boy in this. That's Magnus' mom. Literally, I showed that on the back of the camera to Mom right after I'd done it, and she started crying. Because this is the Magnus she had always known. Nobody else had seen. Magnus and I got a chance to gift Mom this incredible thing. And that's what this is. This is an incredible gift project. It's gifting me, it's gifting the community, it's gifting doctors like Philip DeMio, who runs 2 clinics in Ohio, who's taken his entire medical practice and specifically focuses on the areas of autism. Or Dr. Martha Herbert up at Harvard Medical, who's scanning and looking at the minds, the brains of folks who are on the autism spectrum. What is so distinctly unique or different? How does the neurological process work for people who are on the spectrum? Or Dr. Valerie Hugh, who, with next to no research dollars and a cadre of high school interns, is breaking down the genetics of the autism community, looking for not the genetic reason for it, the epigenetics. And epigenetics are like, you've got a circuit board that are your genetics. Epigenetics are a piece of wire, somebody just happens to drop on the circuit board. It's not meant to be there. It's an environmental insult. It should and can be taken away. At any time, you could reach down and you could pluck that thing out. And then the person goes back to being, well, hopefully, higher function. It's a really interesting body of research. The thing that I want to talk really about is where we as a society decide to come to this community. How we get the courage to step forward, to stop looking at each individual and asking them to be neurotypical. I have Aspergers Syndrome. I don't look like it. I know that. I'm very well trained. Right? I'm 43 years old. I've had more than a few decades to consider how we interact with the world. You don't notice that right here. I'm terrified. I have huge bundles of butterflies and anxiety in my gut. That's what it is to be an Asperger. Always on edge, always terrified. I teach. I'm terrified every day I go to Washington. It scares the heck out of me. Right? My job. Don't ask Aspies to be social. Don't expect them to act like you do if you're neurotypical. Have respect for neurodiversity. We meet them halfway, is what I'm suggesting. You as neurotypicals come to them and see the benefit that they offer to the world. How many of you have iPhones? Smartphones. Keep your hands on iPhones. Smartphones. Oh wow, there's a bunch of people who don't. That's amazing. By the way, I can guarantee you that the development team, most of the development team are on the spectrum, and certainly most of them have kids who are on the spectrum. You go to Silicon Valley, and you go into any of those IT businesses, I kid you not, middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, there will be about a dozen people sleeping under their desks. They're great. Man, we live these benefits from them. They're brilliant. The Space Dynamics crew, they're a little odd, right? Really interesting people. That's because a lot of them are on the spectrum. Think about the great things that can happen. But also think about the folks in the community who can't. Their disability, and it is a disability, so great, so large, such a challenge, that they sit in a home, and they rock, and they flap, or they have tics, but they don't like any food except orange food, and somebody has to take care of them the rest of their lives. There's a big, huge gap there. But it's an amazing community, and if we can find ways to integrate them into society, into the workplace, into the churches, into the schools and into education, what they bring to the community is so unbelievable. But we, as a society, have to have the courage to come together. Primary schools are not set up, they're not ready for the deluge that's coming up. The autism prevalency number is 1 in 47 for Utah. You guys want to know what that really represents? It's kind of an abstract number, right? It represents 19,768 individuals who are in 8th grade receiving services in Utah. Not younger, not older, not receiving services, and certainly not homeschooled. Just 8-year-olds receiving services in the state of Utah. And that information is over 6 years old, which means that the reality of numbers is much more terrifying. If you take conservative estimations on the growth rate of autism, the 1 in 88 number, the national number, and a very conservative growth rate is about 12% to the worst case growth rate is 20%. If you take about 12.5%, in a 10-year period, we're talking about 1 in 9 to 1 in 20 children in the United States will have autism. The highest childhood illness issue we will ever see in not just our lifetimes, but any lifetime that we have ever imagined. Autism is an epidemic today. We face it every single day, and yet we're willing to bury our heads in the sand about it. We have to find reasonable ways to figure out the causation, the prevalency, and ways to create treatment. Treatment is possible. It is there. We can do this. But we also have to step forward and tell our principals, tell our politicians, tell our bosses, tell our religious leaders that we're not willing to let this very vulnerable and very sweet and very sensitive community be put down the way that they are. We need insurance reform in the state of Utah. Absolutely need it. And I can tell you that you politicians, because I've sat in on these meetings, I've talked to their wives, they don't want to do it. Missouri has insurance that every single person who lives in Missouri pays 32 cents extra a year so that folks on the spectrum can receive services. They're dealing with autism. We are not. They refuse to do it here. Literally, I sat in a public meeting where they scolded the parents that we should be grateful for the little bit that they have given us, instead of realizing they haven't done anything for us. We should be embarrassed. It's an interesting issue. It is politics, guys. Autism is politics. And this project has led me to another project called Martyr Saints and Superheroes. I have unfortunately watched people get taken out, dismissed, demeaned, demoralized. And as I've been doing this, I've been meeting all sorts of people from all sorts of different communities, from the conservation community and the environmental community, to human health and development, to therapy. Paul Rogers, he is an equine therapist in Vegas. He has Aspergers Syndrome. He does radical, incredible work for people on the spectrum. And equine therapy does work. It does calm and does help people integrate into society. Or Sarah Fields, she's just down the road over in Moab. She is the queen of uranium, right? That Moab tailing, she's the one who's got that thing to get cleaned up and be done correctly, properly, and so that the water table doesn't have radioactive material in it. Because believe me, if she hadn't stood on her head, she'd probably be drinking radioactive water. There's Will Calder, his daughter Sarah. He's a community advocate, activist. He lives in a very, very, and when I say very, I've been in most of the hoods in the country. He lives in one of the roughest hoods I've ever been in. When I say hood, I'm talking about a really poor community. There's a lot of crime and a lot of violence. Will's one of the very few white guys who's there. He makes sure that everybody in his neighborhood is fed. He makes sure that every kid at Christmas has a gift. But he also does that for the autism community in D.C. He's a huge fundraising effort. He's got this tiny little barber shop. I mean, like, that's the width of his barber shop. It's teeny. He's a great man with a huge heart. Or Garth Lenz. When you decide to take on the big boys, you think of Garth. Garth is the man who has brought the information about XL tar sands pipelines in Canada. You guys ever heard about tar sands in Canada? He's the one. He's the single loudest voice about this one issue who has brought it to the international audience through his photography, his National Geographic photography. you know, he's running into problems. He can't go to the oil mining towns without the risk of getting mugged from the companies. Barbara Lowe Fisher, president and founder of the National Vaccine Information Center in D.C. The reason you can go to the doctor, you can get a shot, they have to give you information before, the informed consent thing you sign, solely because of her. She's one of those moms whose son was hurt. And then she was mad. And then she had to do something about it. But in the process of taking on a big pharma, they have taken her out to pasture more times than you would ever want to consider. She is very timid, for good reasons. The politicians have really hurt her life. But she has done, single-handedly, done more for everybody in this room than almost anybody that I have met. There's my wonderful wife, Jackie, who inspires me ferociously. She is my Madonna. Or John Weissman, the Living Rivers Project. Again, he's down in Moab. He is trying to save the Colorado River from a catastrophe beyond imagination. They've done enough research now on the flood ratios in the Colorado River, and about every couple thousand years, the floodwaters, you guys know how high the Colorado is? The floodwaters are almost 800 feet higher, and it's a flash flood, which means once it gets down to the dams downriver, it'll smash right through them. It'll be like matchbox or matchsticks. He's trying to take out the Grand Canyon Dam, not because he hates the dam, though he does hate the dam. He doesn't want to see billions of people's lives lost because the government won't recognize this catastrophe didn't happen. There's Dr. Valerie Hugh, the geneticist I was talking about. Dr. Judy Zimmerman, she's the one who figured out the prevalency rates for Utah. She also has done some really, really interesting research on environmental insult and the connection of environmental insults to the birth rates with autism. Now, she's paid some prices I can't actually say. She no longer is with the University of Utah. The question again I want to come back to is, what is the thing, what is the one thing in your life you're willing to step forward and fight? It could be apple trees in every neighborhood. That's pretty unpolitical, right? Somebody would probably say trespassing, right? Infringements on my rights because apples, the little kids are in my yard picking my apples. No, it's community apples. Everybody wants to learn about apples. You take the apples and you make, pies and you make jellies and jars, and then you get them to the food pantry, and the food pantry can use them, or they can sell them for profit, and then it helps the food pantry. There's a lot of ways you can do this. It's a really interesting kind of approach. But I want to tell you that whatever you do, think about before you do it. Don't just jump into it. Don't just be flashy in the pan. Jackie and I are fairly middle of the road, fairly calm. I'm an impassioned person, obviously. But we're not out yelling and screaming. I'm not angry at Big Pharma. Big Pharma is just part of the system. I'm not angry at Monsanto and food corporations. They're just part of the system. I'm not angry at the federal government. They're just part of the system. I'm angry at a few doctors, but not at the medical industry. But all of them are part of the problem. And the best way to get them to change is to talk to them rationally, talk to them reasonably, and talk to them compassionately. They're human beings. They have hearts. I can see in every single one of their eyes there is some concern about autism. There is some emotion that is happening. Well, that happens even with the coldest of CEOs and the coldest of politicians. We all care about someone who we can then empathize. We're literally, human beings are designed to empathize. Okay? Even folks with autism, though, there is a myth that we are not empathetic. That's actually incorrect. We are empathetic. I want to leave you with two quotes as seed thoughts. The first is Mahatma Gandhi, who said that the waters, the land, and the air are not our inheritance from our forefathers, but a loan to us by our children. And therefore, we must give it back to them with what we found. And the other is, I think, really the core of what I want you guys to walk out with. It's from Robert Kennedy, who said, each time a man stands up for an ideal and acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those tiny ripples build a current that can sweep down the mightiest walls of pressure resistance. Reach down, grab the pedal, throw it in the wall. Change your circle of influence, and watch how it changes your life. Thanks. So I guess it's a question and answer.
Yeah.
I have a question. How do you find these people that like have low attention, but they the media isn't following them, but you somehow seem to find them and they're making such a great impact? How do you find them?
Oh gosh, it's really a lot. It's also calling people. I mean, fortunately, being in the media, I worked in advertising in Chicago for years, and I've known a ton of photojournalists, so I would call friends and say, hey, do you know anybody in a given area? Who would you suggest? You know, dropping emails to different groups, different regions, and look at the environmental organizations and sort of say, well, who's like the really crazy radical person you can think of? You won't let it go. Like this pit bull that just, for the lack of any knowledge, you're going to do this because they've got to do it. And it's really interesting to see who steps forward, who nominates an individual. And I've never been disappointed with anybody who's been suggested. And literally every time I come away from these martyrs, photo shoots, I feel so empowered. Like life in general can sort of wear on me, but boy, when I walk away from these, it's like, okay, now I know what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and I can do this. They're doing this, I can do this. Yeah.
Why did you choose photography to help spread your message?
I think photography found me. The first time I did anything photographic, I was 12, and it was a 4x5. So my sister was a photo major, and she just needed somebody to schlep a camera for her, because she was a lot tinier than me. And so she'd been trying to compose this photograph for 45 minutes, and she was getting angry. I said, well, can I take a look? And so I crawled over to the dark cloth, and I looked. I said, can I set up a photograph? She's like, oh yeah, whatever, go ahead. And in 20 seconds, I had the whole thing composed and ready. That was it. I was hook, line, and sinker. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So I don't think I've ever had a decision.
Do you for pictures, do you do like families or weddings?
I have, well, I shouldn't say never. I think I've done 3 weddings in my life. Never, ever again. Torture. No, my experience was always corporate communications, film, whether it was motion picture film, TV, broadcast. I was a producer director in Chicago at the time I was 21. So I have really been one of these people who pushed very, very hard and did crazy things. I'm that guy who has those crazy big ideas and everybody else goes, that's insane, you can't do that. And somehow I always find a way to do it. Cheez-Its. Worked on the Cheez-Its shop. Worked on McDonald's throughout the 1990s. Or romantic cookbooks. So that's actually my professional area of expertise. Yes?
Do you ever have a hard time photographing these people? And if so, how do you get around that?
I wouldn't say I have a hard time. Okay.
Like do they let you photograph them?
Oh yeah, no.
Okay.
Everybody is a willing participant. I'm never going to force anybody to sit for this portraits at all, especially the autism community. I have way too much respect for them. I don't want them to be victims. I want them to be empowered. And often, many of the people who you see who are looking at the camera may actually never look you in the eye. They're really scared of everybody and everything. The irony is that within the commercial world, I was never meant to be a portrait photographer. In fact, the portrait guys would tease me that I was the worst photographers. But this community I connect with, I can understand them, they can understand me. And I learn techniques to help me engage people, even if they're apprehensive or worried. Moms and dads don't like it when their little ones hop up and run off. I'm like, no, let them go, let them go. you know, and we wrangle them around, and we get them back on the set, and I may have a blip to get a shot. But that's okay, let them be them. If they're the last shot we saw of the facing autism, that was my son. It sounds bad, right? Torture my own kid. But that was real, that was him, you know, and I've had kids cry on the set, and mom wants to call and say, no, this is the thing, this is autism. Let him be for just a minute. He's going to do this whether you hold him or not. Let's make this thing happen. I had a young woman in New York this summer. Her whole family, so there were 6 people behind me, and the doctor, actually Gauthiér, after we were back at school. And this young woman is a grabber. She'll move really fast and she'll grab anything and pull away. And they were really scared about my lights and the camera and all that. I just finally had to say, no, back off, guys. Let her be, she's fine. So I showed her what the softbox felt like. She was interested, she batted at it. No depth of perception, that's fine. You know, those lights have been thrown across the room. It really doesn't make any difference. I want the photograph, not the lights. And she's trying to grab for the camera, but you know, I'm watching her and I'm engaging her. I guess I've been in this long enough to know the community kind of well enough to get a feeling. I have had people who just can't do it. They come in and they sit down, it's just too much. Let them go. Never, ever, ever, in this community, never force the issue.
So you do a lot of portraits, right?
I have, at this point, almost 300 portraits that are retouched for just this body of work, but there are another 400 still in post-production.
So how do you
I've done it in 3 years, guys.
people who struggle with portraits? Like, what do you suggest?
Well, why worry about the importance of the right. I shot food for years. I shot in, my entire thesis work was about your occupation, everybody's occupation in a place, home or work, and what you could know based on the Gestalt experience, the nested behaviors of people in their space. I was teasing you about sitting up in the front row. I know a lot about you because of your behavior sitting in the front row. My entire thesis was about people, not about a particular person. So don't worry about it. Don't connect to portraiture. It's okay. There's a lot of other things to photograph. Question?
How would we go about finding, like, you said you were on TED Talks? How would we find your segment?
It's not an easy one to find because I didn't tag it very well. If you went to my website and you go onto the blog, there's a direct link there. If you did a search on YouTube for my name, you should be able to find it there.
Okay, what's your website?
It's ChristopherGauthiér.com.
How do you find, like, you go about, like, finding people who would be interested in what you're doing? Like,
To exhibits.
anything, like, how did you find the first person that you worked with? Anything, like, your first job?
Well, are you talking about the employment job or the portrait series?
Or like pictures, something.
The origin of this series actually came out of one of the most humiliating parenting moments of my life. Maddie and I were totally in it. She is this honey badger. She's an African honey badger. She's this tiny little fluffy thing, right? She's all cute and squeaky and everybody thinks she's so adorable. But she's got claws and teeth, like really claws and teeth. And she's crazy enough to take on a pack of lions by herself. So she's the only person outside my wife who will not back down to fight. Often that doesn't happen in my life experience. So she and I were just going head to head. We were yelling at each other. And that's why I said this was an embarrassing parent. And I realized I wasn't being the dad I wanted to be. And I had that experience several times. But thinking, what do we do about this? What do we do about this? I was like, I'm an artist. I can make work about whatever the heck I want to make. And I ran down the hall, and Maddie's chasing after me, still yelling at me, and I grabbed the lights and the strobes and the camera and all that stuff, and I set it up. She's still barking, and I popped her down in a booster seat right on the floor, and she's still yelling at me, and I looked up over the top of the camera and I said, Madeline, please. And I looked, the first portrait's there. That's her. I'm going to shut you out, Dad. I don't hear you, Dad. In your face, Dad. I'm going to get that at 14, and I know it. That's my future. And then I turned around, I pulled her off set, and I popped myself down in that booster seat. And yes, I did fit the booster seat just barely. And I took my own portrait, and I don't show it often because it's really embarrassing. I was furiously angry. I was trying to push it down and swallow it. That's a dad's experience. That's the dad's experience. 2 portraits for 9 months before I realized that I had to do a body of work on this. I had to reach out to the dads and say, look, some other guy out there gets this. You're not alone. And then it just grew from there. We reached out to the media community that we had. In fact, again, politics. I know nobody likes to talk about politics. Nobody wants to be heard about politics. State politicians wanted to cut the early baby watch intervention funds. Like, no early care, no early intervention treatment for any kids. Whack it. And so we started a small body of portraits of families. And we invited them to come up to the open. Of course, they didn't do it. I'm not surprised. But through much advocacy of lots of different people throughout the autism community, they decided to attract a decision. And that's how you affect change. And I just kept reaching out. This work is available for any non-for-profit autism organization around the country, with one exception, Autism Speaks. I won't give it to them. I've let them put it in their science blog, but they can't use it for PR. Everybody else can, free of charge. I'm trying to make the national vision for autism. And the only reason I won't do it with Autism Speaks is that their least paid executive is $450,000 a year. $500,000. So when you do something for Autism Speaks, you're great in somebody else's income. There are many other organizations around where the executive directors do not make an income. Their support staff is entirely volunteer. The funding literally goes back to the community education. They can have this stuff free of charge. That's what it's for. Yes?
This isn't a question, it's just a comment, but my senior year, my English teacher shared the TED Talk video, and we did a whole term project on it. We all had to do something that like helped change, and then there was a lot of like programs that run still in our high school most of it. So,
It's critical. Guys, the art world is changing. She hits a really good point, and your teacher is on the money, because it's not about making pretty things. In fact, the truth be told, photography has never been about making pretty things. It's always been about impacting change. Everybody, throws up Ansel Adams as the guy who made pretty things. Oh no, he's like one of the most famous conservation photographers in history. The Sierra Club? Oh yeah, why do you think we have really great state parks with great legislation? Ansel Adams, right? And he makes pretty things. If you make pretty things, you can still do really interesting work. Any other questions? Yes?
So you said this was given out free of charge and it's for nonprofit organizations.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, how did you get funding for this project to be able to get it all together?
That's it. At this point, only until recently when I was given the Utah Visual Artists Fellowship, it has been entirely and exclusively self-funded, which means I put my family in financial struggles. But I think it's that important. It's critical that we get out there and we do everything we possibly can. I've got friends who can't. Their children are struggling so much. Mom and dad are just so overburdened. They have family support. Here in Utah, lots of people have family support. But we don't. We're not from here. But we're up enough out of the rocks, we can stick our heads up, and it's our turn to bark out, in safety or the community. And so I feel like it's my responsibility